I stare at the empty plate in front of me, the steam from the teapot long gone cold. I'm not sure how long I've been sitting like this. The house is quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. It's strange, the little details we latch onto when everything else is slipping. The chipped edge of the plate, for instance, I never noticed it before. The same way I never noticed how fragile my marriage was. A few hours ago, I burned a photograph in the kitchen sink. It was a shot of me and Rebecca under a Christmas tree years ago, laughing about something lost to time. I stood there, watching the flame curl around her printed face until it was gone. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to see something else destroyed, so it wouldn't be just me. But it doesn't help. The emptiness is still here. It's this thick, suffocating thing in my chest that won't go away. And that plate on the table stares back like it wants answers from me. Answers I don't have. I got the flash drive from a dusty box in my closet. Honestly, it was a whim. I just wanted to remember better days. A random feeling that overcame me yesterday. I thought maybe I'd watch old family clips. It's been too long since I saw the kids dancing in their pajamas, or the neighbor, old Mr. Tate, playing that out-of-tune accordion by the tree during the holidays. Those were good times, as unremarkable as they might sound to someone else. So I boiled water for tea and inserted the flash drive into my laptop. The video started in an avalanche of memories. The Christmas tree lights blinking in half the frame, the neighbor's grin as he squeezed the accordion keys, the kids shrieking with laughter, all bundled in colorful pajamas, snow drifting outside. A swirl of the past that made me ache with nostalgia. I felt a lump in my throat, the kind that comes when you realize how many moments have faded into the rearview mirror. Then came that final video. Well, not the final file, but the final one I was able to watch with any sense of peace. It wasn't labeled. It just opened, and there was no cheerful music, no kids. Instead, it showed a beige hotel room, the walls a bland, faded color. The camera was a bit shaky, like the person holding it tried to keep it stable but couldn't. A man's voice, low and playful. Then the lens panned, and I saw my wife, Rebecca, sitting on the edge of a king-sized bed, wearing a blouse that I'd never seen before, with just the top button undone. Her face was turned slightly away, a half-smile. The man behind the camera said something in a teasing tone. Then she laughed, and it was not a polite or nervous laugh. It was the kind of laugh she gave me back when we were newlyweds, open, warm, like sharing the secret only the two of you understand. Except now, it wasn't with me. A second later, the camera jumped, the image blurred, and the man set the device down somewhere on a table, capturing them both in the frame. I recognized him. Jackson Thompson. I'd met him only once or twice in passing. He was some sort of hotel consultant. But I knew enough to see he wasn't just a colleague. Not with the way his hand slid confidently to her waist. I remember how my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to pause it, stop it, or maybe just close the laptop. But I couldn't. I felt glued to the screen. My heart pounded in my ears, my chest constricting so tightly I could barely inhale. She leaned toward him. They kissed. It wasn't just a friendly or curious kiss. It was heated, lingering. The hush in that moment was deafening, as if my entire life had turned into a silent film. Every detail, her half-lowered eyelids, the tilt of her head, was etched into my eyes like a brand. I won't lie. There was an erotic charge to the scene, something that in any other context might have been seductive. But to me, it felt like I was watching a horror movie I couldn't escape from. Their hands started roaming. And for a second, I realized how my entire sense of self hinged on me pressing the escape key. I should have turned it off. But I didn't. My eyes stayed on them, my mind numb. When Jackson's mouth traveled down her neck, she closed her eyes and whispered his name. That's when I did it. I paused. My hand shook over the trackpad. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And yet, deep down, there was a chilling sense of recognition, like a puzzle piece slipping into place. A part of me had known for a while. The random late-night texts she'd guard with a password. The business trips that supposedly involved event planning conferences. The nights she crawled into bed smelling of a different cologne. God help me, I ignored the signs because facing them was too terrifying. I slammed the laptop shut and slid it off the table. There was no rage, just a hollow ache. The steam from my tea was gone. That was all I could focus on, how cold the cup felt in my hands. And then I got the text from her. It arrived later that evening, as I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring into the nothingness. My phone buzzed. I checked it, thinking it might be work or some random telemarketer. But it was from Rebecca. I read it once, then again. Only you. I can't live without you. Last night was magical. It ended with a little heart emoji. She'd sent it to me by accident. My entire body went rigid with a burst of adrenal shock. She must have meant to send it to him. That's how cheaply my entire life had turned. A single mistap on her phone. She realized it immediately, because I saw the little typing indicator. But no follow-up message arrived. She must have been in pure panic, or perhaps she was just sitting there, flustered, not knowing how to fix it. I didn't reply. What was there to say? All the cliches about betrayal and heartbreak suddenly felt laughably inadequate. I couldn't muster a single word. I wanted to smash my phone, but that would have been pointless. So I turned it off, set it on the couch, and stared at the shadows on the ceiling for a long time. The next morning, after a sleepless night filled with images of them tangled together, I made a decision. An odd, impulsive decision that in hindsight feels like a half measure of madness. I went to a florist and bought the most expensive roses they had. Then I walked straight to our neighbor, a sweet old lady named Mrs. Donahue, who'd once baked me a pie for my birthday. I handed her the bouquet at her doorstep. She took it gingerly, blinking in confusion. I couldn't form the right words to explain. Eventually, I just said, "I hope you have a wonderful day." And I left. I'm sure she thought I'd lost my mind. I kind of had. Let everyone think what they want, I told myself. My entire world was unraveling anyway. That evening, I set the stage for a confrontation. I texted both Rebecca and Jackson, told them to come over. The message was simple. We need to talk. Come to the house at 8. I wasn't sure Jackson would agree, but apparently he had enough nerve or curiosity to see it through. Rebecca arrived first, obviously on edge, eyes red and puffy from what looked like hours of crying. She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "Wait for him," I said. That's all I managed. When Jackson walked in, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wore a crisp button-down shirt and slacks like he was fresh off a business meeting. He didn't make eye contact with me. She stood in the living room, arms crossed over her chest, trembling slightly. I motioned for them to sit at the dining table. They hesitated, then complied. In the center of that table was my laptop, and next to it, that damn flash drive. No one said a word. My voice felt locked behind my ribs, so I simply started the video, maximizing it to full screen. The image filled the space, that same beige hotel room. The hush was brutal, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Jackson let out a small, involuntary grunt. Rebecca's face turned pale. I stood behind them, arms folded. They watched themselves, watched the meeting of lips and hands, the exchange of whispers, watched everything I'd seen. My wife tried to glance back at me, but I stayed rigid. The final freeze frame with their bodies entwined felt like an assault on my senses. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I forced myself to witness it again, if only to harden that final wedge between the man I used to be and the man I was about to become. After it ended, I ejected the flash drive and placed it quietly on the table in front of Jackson. "Take it," I said in a low, controlled tone. "Try being me for an hour. See how it feels." He looked up at me, confusion and guilt scrawled across his face. Slowly, he reached out, but then he faltered. His hand hovered over the flash drive, trembling before he withdrew. He couldn't even touch it, as if it burned. Rebecca's eyes welled with tears, and she started to speak, but no words came out, just a shudder. Then she sobbed, quietly, into her hands. I never raised my voice. The entire confrontation was eerily silent, like we were ghosts in a room reenacting some tragedy. Eventually, she tried to form sentences. It just happened. Stephen, please listen. That's when I felt a twist in my gut. She used my name. So personal, so familiar, yet so distant. Jackson tried to stammer something about not meaning to hurt me. Then I saw in his face a flicker of arrogance, like he was trying to regain composure, the confident consultant persona. But whatever cool act he had, it splintered under the weight of the reality I'd shoved in front of him. He couldn't hold my gaze. The difference was stark. In that video, he was all swagger. Here, he was smaller, shoulders hunched. I have it all, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the air like a blade. From that magical morning until now, it's recorded. I tapped my phone, letting them know I'd been collecting evidence, though I didn't elaborate. They both looked at me with a shocked mix of dread and disbelief. Rebecca cried harder, shoulders shaking, but she didn't wail or scream. She just kept whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over, as though that mantra could fix it. I walked to the kitchen and poured water from the kettle. Even though it was lukewarm, it gave me a moment to breathe. They were calling to me, trying to reason, to justify. But their voices blurred. I wanted to keep my composure, to keep the upper hand by not losing control. A man doesn't cry. At least, that was the mantra hammered into me as a kid. So I pressed my lips together and inhaled slowly. God, I wanted to say something devastating, something that would crush them the way they'd crushed me. But I felt numb. Eventually, I turned around. "You need to go," I said evenly, looking at Jackson. He blinked, as if uncertain he'd heard right. I set my cup down. "Just leave." His eyes flickered to Rebecca, then back to me. I guess he was trying to decide if there was anything else to salvage from this. After a moment, he slipped out of the chair and walked to the door, shoulders drooping, fumbling with the flash drive. He left it on the table, though. Couldn't bear to take it. The click of the front door sounded final, like a chapter closing. Rebecca stood in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped around herself. "I never wanted this to happen," she whispered, voice shaking. "Didn't you?" I asked, my throat raw. She blinked back tears. "I mean, I didn't want to hurt you. I can't even explain how it started. I was lonely, and then Jackson he was there, and we." She swallowed, looking for the right words. "I guess I was searching for some spark. I know it's wrong. Her voice trailed off, realizing no explanation would justify the images we just watched. Guilt flickered across her face, and I recognized it wasn't just guilt for the act. It was guilt for being caught. A different wave of anger rose in me, but I still forced it down. Some corner of my mind wondered if maybe I was to blame. Maybe I'd been an inattentive husband, lost in my own routine, failing to provide the emotional excitement she craved. That's the twisted part of me that insisted I was at fault for not being enough. The same twisted part that made me buy roses for the neighbor, as if giving away what she should have valued would make me feel better. "I'm so sorry," she said again, stepping closer. I took a step back. The look in her eyes was desperate, pleading. But the memory of her face in that hotel footage was too strong. I heard the echo of her moans, saw the arch of her back as she welcomed him. I clenched my fists, feeling the nails bite into my palms. "I need you gone too." She froze. "What?" "I need time to think," I said slowly. "Go stay at a friend's place, a hotel, your brother's. Anywhere but here." She pressed her lips together and nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. For a second, she looked as if she might hug me. But I glared, a silent warning. She retreated, went to the bedroom, and packed a small bag. The minutes dragged out, each one stabbing a fresh wound into my chest, even though outwardly I stayed stone-faced. She paused at the doorway on her way out, the bag slung over her shoulder, eyes filled with sorrow. "This doesn't have to be over, does it?" she whispered. I said nothing, and eventually she left. The door shut, and I was alone with the stillness. The next few days felt surreal. I went through the motions, worked at my desk, answered a few phone calls, ate at random intervals. The flash drive stayed on the kitchen table, a silent threat, or maybe a promise. I couldn't tell which. I avoided it, but in the back of my mind, I knew it was there. My mind kept replaying her text. "Only you. Can't live without you." Magical. The swirl of betrayal and self-blame was relentless. I felt a constant dull ache, an anxious churn in my gut that made it impossible to sleep. The cat, Willow, wandered around, meowing for attention I couldn't give. Sometimes I woke up drenched in sweat, having dreamed of that damned hotel room. It was like living in a parallel universe, watching my old life from a distance. Then she started texting me, calling me, leaving voicemails. "I need to talk. We can't just leave it like this. I love you, Stephen. Please let me fix this." The messages ranged from frantic to apologetic, from tearful to angry. I listened to a couple of voicemails, but I didn't respond. I wasn't sure how to. My mind was a locked box of confusion, grief, and an odd sense of humiliation. I felt like the entire neighborhood, the entire world, might somehow know. Maybe that was just paranoia, but it gnawed at me. A week passed, and I realized I couldn't hide forever. She managed to come by the house one afternoon, let herself in with her key. I was seated in the living room, staring at the blank TV. She stood there with a trembling posture, her hair disheveled, her cheeks streaked with old tears. "Stephen," she said softly, "I want to make it right." "Not sure you can," I answered. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. She came closer, kneeling beside the sofa, placing her hand on my arm. I stiffened but didn't push her away. For a moment, we stayed like that in a strange tableau, her head bowed, my eyes unfocused. "We could try counseling," she said. "We could, please. I know how bad it looks." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Looks? It was more than a look, Becky." She tried to gather her courage. "I'll break it off with Jackson completely." She paused, struggling. It meant nothing. I mean, it felt like excitement, but it was hollow. "You have to believe me." I stared at her. My vision blurred, and the suppressed anger churned in my gut. "I don't have to believe anything right now," I said. My voice cracked, betraying the heartbreak simmering beneath my calm tone. "I'm trying not to lose my mind, if that matters." She bit her lip. "Then at least tell me there's a chance." I said nothing. She took my silence as a possible yes, or at least not a hard no. Gradually, she began to show up more often. Sometimes just to sit in the same room, sometimes to drop off groceries. She tried to move back in, but I told her no. The tension was suffocating, yet a part of me couldn't throw her out entirely. We had so many years together, so many shared memories, and something else loomed in my head. The thought that maybe I was partly to blame for letting our marriage grow stale. The guilt I carried was like a parasite, feeding on my sense of worth. Then Jackson texted me. It was bizarre, seeing his name on my phone. "Can we talk? I need to explain." My first impulse was to delete it, but curiosity, or maybe some twisted need for closure, made me text him back. We arranged to meet in a neutral place, a diner off the highway, a cheap no-frills joint with peeling vinyl booths and strong coffee. I arrived first, found a corner table. My stomach clenched at the thought of facing him. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar, which was unusual for me. But I needed something bitter to ground me. He walked in wearing a casual blazer and jeans, clearly trying to look less corporate. He spotted me, approached the table. As he slid into the seat opposite me, I caught a glimpse of how anxious he was, his eyes darting, hands fidgeting. That cocky swagger I'd once seen in him was absent. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said softly, leaning forward. "But look, I just want you to know it was never about hurting you. I didn't even know you existed at first. Then when I did, I kept telling myself it wasn't serious." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I've done a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of. But this, man, I feel sick about it." I listened, arms crossed, not giving an inch. "Why tell me this now?" I finally asked. He swallowed. "Because I can't eat, I can't sleep. I see that flash drive in my head. You telling me to be you for an hour. I can't. I can't be the guy whose wife cheated with a stranger. And it's my fault that you are." His words stirred something in me. I felt a surge of pity, unexpected and unsettling. I didn't want to pity him. But seeing him like this, it reminded me that we were all just flawed people stumbling through our mistakes. Still, that didn't erase the hurt. "There's nothing else to say," I told him. "What's done is done." He nodded, eyes lowered. "I'm leaving town. My work here is wrapping up. I'd rather go somewhere else. Let you both figure things out." I didn't stop him. I just sipped my coffee, ignoring how the acid churned in my stomach. After a tense pause, he must have realized I had nothing more to add. So he stood. "Take care," he muttered. Then he left. I didn't move for a while, just stared at the half-empty mug. Eventually, I paid the bill and stepped outside into the cold wind, feeling a little lighter and a lot more hollow. Days drifted into weeks. Rebecca and I existed in this weird limbo. She tried everything. Apologies, dinners, promises, a willingness to do therapy, to sign up for couples retreats. I stayed mostly silent, wrestling with my pride, anger, and fear. We had a few cautious talks, more like polite negotiations than real conversations. She swore she was done with Jackson, that it had been a mistake. I questioned her sincerity, and a few times I almost broke down sobbing when she insisted she loved me. I wanted to love her back, but I felt like a shell of a man, incapable of joy or trust. The guilt for my own perceived failures battled with the profound sense of betrayal. That war inside me left me exhausted. I found myself thinking about revenge. Not the physical kind. I'm no murderer. But I imagined sending the videos to her family, to our friends, to her workplace, or even posting them anonymously online. A savage part of me wanted to humiliate her the way she humiliated me. Maybe that would make her feel my pain. But then I'd remember the life we once shared, the kids from the videos. Though they were now older, grown and out on their own, I didn't want them sucked into this mess. And I thought about the woman I married, who, for years, had been my companion, my friend. Was I willing to scorch the earth? Each time I hovered over the send button, I hesitated, my stomach twisting in knots. Eventually, I realized I needed a final confrontation. I told Rebecca to come over, officially, this time, and I set out 2 chairs in the living room. No fancy dinner, no illusions, just 2 chairs facing each other with the coffee table between us. I placed the flash drive in plain sight, the symbol of everything that had gone wrong. She arrived, fidgeting, clearly nervous. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, tried to meet my eyes. "I've asked you here," I said calmly, "to make a decision." My voice trembled slightly. "I can't keep living in limbo." She nodded, tears brimming. "Anything. Whatever you need." I inhaled. "Before we start, I want to know. Why? Please, just tell me. No sugarcoating." She swallowed, looking at the flash drive. We lost something, Stephen. You and I. It's not that I don't love you. I do. But I felt invisible for so long. Like you were always at work, always tired, always somewhere else mentally. Her face twisted with guilt. I wanted to feel alive, I guess. It's not an excuse. It was just an escape. and I was stupid enough to believe I could have it without losing you. The surge of anger flared in me, but I kept it in check. You were lonely. I almost laughed. So was I. But I never ran off to another woman's arms. She stared at the floor, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. I made a terrible mistake. I leaned forward. I'm not perfect. I can own that. But you broke something between us. Something I don't know how to fix. My voice cracked on the last word. She nodded, trembling. I know. But if there's a path back, I want it. I'll do whatever it takes. The rawness of her plea struck me. Memories flooded in. Our wedding day, her excitement when we bought this house, the times we sat up late discussing random dreams for the future. The difference between then and now was staggering. I took the flash drive, turning it in my hand. I have everything on here. Every message, every video, everything you two said and did. I held her gaze. I thought about using it to ruin you. Ruin him. That's how angry I've been. She flinched. Her voice trembled. I understand. But that's not who I want to be. My words came out with surprising steadiness. I'm not going to destroy you, or me, or us, even if we don't survive this. I shook the flash drive gently. This is just evidence of how far we've fallen apart. She nodded through a blur of tears, reaching for my hand. I let her take it. It was the first time we touched in weeks. Her skin felt warm, familiar. My own chest tightened with conflicting emotions. Relief, sadness, and a hollow sense of fear. Stephen, I'm so sorry, she whispered again, voice raw with remorse. I took a trembling breath. I believe you, I said, though the admission felt sharp, like swallowing a shard of glass. I believe you're sorry, but that doesn't erase it. She squeezed my hand. What can I do? First, I said, drawing my hand back, you need to respect my space. I can't promise we'll stay married, or that we'll get divorced, or that we'll be anything. But if you push me, I might just break. My voice was tight, chest constricted. She nodded vigorously, tears spilling down her cheeks. We sat there for what felt like hours, not speaking. Eventually, exhaustion weighed on me like a physical weight. I realized we both reached a limit. There was no quick fix, no easy solution. The only question was whether I choose to keep living with her betrayal or walk away. A few days later, I found myself in the car, driving across state lines. I didn't bother telling Rebecca where I was going. I just needed distance. Maybe it was a cowardly retreat, or maybe a well-deserved break. I ended up by a lake where my father used to take me fishing when I was a kid. There was a small, no-name motel, mostly empty in the off-season. I got a room, switched off my phone, and just sat on the bed, staring at my reflection in the blank TV screen. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was in a motel, the same type of place that had destroyed my marriage, but I felt numb, as if I needed to confront some symbolic demon. I spent a couple of days there, taking long walks along the shoreline, the water still partially frozen in places. The wind was cold enough to sting my cheeks. I'd pick up a rock and toss it in, watch the ripples spread. Maybe I was waiting for a sign, a moment of clarity that would tell me what to do. None came. Instead, I just found a sort of grim acceptance. My marriage was broken. Whether it could be rebuilt or not was up to me as much as her. Eventually, I checked my phone. Several missed calls and texts from Rebecca, a couple from Jackson, which I ignored, and a few from concerned friends who'd noticed something off. I responded to none. I simply tossed the phone on the nightstand and closed my eyes. On the third day, I drove home. It was dark by the time I arrived. The house was quiet, but I could tell from the porch light that she'd been there recently. Inside, the living room was tidy, the table cleared except for a single envelope with my name on it. I picked it up, hands shaking. Inside was a letter from her, apologizing again, vowing to move out if that's what I wanted, proclaiming her love, all neatly written in her slightly slanted handwriting. She left her new address at a friend's apartment, saying she'd wait for me to contact her. I paced the empty halls, reading the letter over and over. Then I pulled out the flash drive from my pocket, the little piece of plastic that held the darkest moment of my life. I placed it on the coffee table, stared at it as though it were an old enemy, which it was. I thought about the hours I'd spent raging at it, considering how to use it to tear everything down. My reflection stared back from the TV screen, reminding me of all that time I spent in that shabby motel, trying to outrun the heartbreak. I don't remember deciding. I don't remember the exact moment my anger crumbled enough for me to act. But I do recall plugging the flash drive into my laptop, navigating to the files. Everything was there. The messages, the videos, the evidence. My finger hovered over the delete key. A swirl of memories passed through me. Her smile in better days, the hollow look of her tears, Jackson's stuttered apology, my father's advice about how a man handles his pride and pain. My chest felt tight as if I were about to cry. But a man shouldn't cry. That voice in my head repeated it. I exhaled a shaky breath. Then I pressed the key. One by one, I watched the files vanish, their presence disappearing into digital oblivion. I emptied the recycle bin, my body shaking. And in that moment, I felt something akin to relief. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but a release of the burden of proof. Now all that remained was the intangible truth that hung between us, whether we liked it or not. I closed the laptop and looked at that empty plate on the kitchen table, the same one from days before. My life still felt vacant in so many ways, but at least now there was a possibility, maybe not a promise, of moving forward. Whether Rebecca and I could rebuild, I still didn't know. Whether I'd ever trust her again, I had no clue. But I felt calmer, as if a violent storm had passed, leaving behind the debris for me to sort through in the quiet aftermath. The front door opened softly. I turned to see Rebecca standing there, eyes rimmed red, a mixture of hope and dread on her face. She must have decided to check on me. Our gazes locked, neither of us saying a word. She stepped forward, cautiously, as though approaching a wounded animal. I didn't move. For a moment, I thought of screaming at her, or maybe just collapsing in sobs. But all that emerged was a single shaky breath. She took another step, and I stayed still, breathing. In the hush of that moment, I wasn't sure if what we had left was salvageable or broken beyond repair. Maybe we'd limp along, or maybe we find a way to start again. I had no illusions that I could just forget what I'd seen. But I also couldn't cling to that flash drive forever. She stopped a few feet away, hands trembling at her sides, tears balancing on her lashes. "Stephen," she whispered. Her voice carried that trembling, quiet regret. I closed my eyes for a brief second, tasting the bitterness still on my tongue. The man I was before was gone. What replaced him was someone older, more scared, but maybe stronger in some twisted sense. When I opened my eyes, I realized there were no words left, just the two of us, an empty plate, and the silent, heavy air that waited for whatever came next. She took another step, her expression pleading. And though I wanted to tear the entire world apart, I stayed. I found my hand reaching out, barely touching hers, the lightest brush of fingertips. In that suspended moment, neither of us spoke. We stood together in a fragile silence that was both devastating and oddly comforting, like the quiet after a thunderstorm. I couldn't tell if it was the start of a new dawn or the final sunset on us, but I knew the weight of it all would stay with me for the rest of my life. And that was enough for now.